All right, well, moving on to 14.2, human genetic disorders. The far side, it says, freeze. Okay, now, who's the brains of this outfit? Our goal is to analyze how heredity and family history can impact personal health. Our objectives. First one is to explain how small changes in DNA cause genetic disorders. And the second one is to summarize the problems caused by non-disjunction. Well, let's think about it first. Have you ever heard the expression, it runs in the family? Relatives or friends might have said that about your smile or the shape of your ears, but what could it mean when they talk about diseases and disorders? So what is a genetic disorder? Our first objective is to explain how small changes in DNA cause genetic disorders. Molecular research techniques have shown a direct link between genotype and phenotype. For example, people of African and European ancestry are more likely to have wet earwax, the dominant form. Those of Asia or Native American ancestry most often have the dry form, which is recessive. A single DNA base change from guanine to adenine in the gene for membrane transport protein causes this protein to produce dry earwax instead of wet earwax. Kind of gross, huh? There is a direct connection between molecular and trait, between genotype and phenotype. In other words, there is a molecular basis for genetic disorders. Changes in genes' DNA sequences can change proteins by altering their amino acid sequences, which may directly affect one's phenotype. Thousands of genetic disorders are caused by changes in individual genes. These changes often affect specific proteins associated with important cellular functions. This disorder is caused by a defective allele for beta globin, one of two polypeptides in hemoglobin, the oxygen-carrying protein in red blood cells. Sickle cell disease is what I'm talking about. The defective polypeptide makes hemoglobin less soluble, causing the hemoglobin molecules to stick together when the blood's oxygen levels decreases. The molecules clump into long fibers, forcing cells into a distinctive sickle kind of a shape, as you can see pictured right here, which then gives the disorder its name, sickle cell disease. Sickle cell shapes are more rigid than normal blood cells, and they tend to get stuck in the capillaries. If the blood stops moving through the capillaries, there's damage to cells, tissues, and even organs can result. Another disease is cystic fibrosis, or CF, is the most common among people of European ancestry. Most cases results from the deletion of just 3 bases in the gene for a protein called cystic. The fibrosis transmembrane conductant regulator, or CFTR. As a result, the amino acid phenylalanine is missing from the protein. See the X right there. CFTR normally allows chloride ions to pass across the cell membrane. A loss of these bases removes a single amino acid, phenylalanine, from the CFTR, causing the protein to then fold improperly. This misfolded protein is then destroyed. With cell membranes unable to transport the chloride ions, tissues throughout the body, there's a malfunction. Children with CF, cystic fibrosis, have serious digestive problems and produce thick, heavy mucus that clogs their lungs and their breathing passageways. People with one normal copy of the CF allele are unaffected by CF because they can produce enough CFTR to allow their cells to work properly. 2 copies of the defective alleles are needed to produce the disorder, which means the CF allele is then recessive. Another disease is the Huntington's disease. It is caused by a dominant allele for a protein found in the brain. The allele for this disease contains long strings of bases in which the codon CAG, coding for the amino acid glutamine, repeats over and over again more than 40 times. Despite intensive study, the reason why these long strings of glutamine cause disease is still not very clear. The symptoms of Huntington's disease, namely mental deterioration and uncontrollable movement, usually do not appear until middle age. The greater the number of codon repeats, the earlier also the disease appears, and the more severe are its symptoms. So disorders such as sickle cell disease and cystic fibrosis are common in human populations. In the United States, the sickle cell allele is carried about by approximately 1 person in 12 of African ancestry, and the cystic fibrosis allele is carried by roughly 1 person in 25 of European ancestry. Why are these alleles still around if they can be fatal for those who carry them, though? Most African Americans today are descended from the populations that originally lived in West Central Africa, where malaria was common, or is common still. Malaria is a mosquito-borne infection caused by a parasite that lives inside the red blood cells. Individuals with 1 copy of the sickle cell allele are generally very healthy and are also highly resistant to the parasite, giving them a great advantage against malaria. The upper map shows the parts of the world where malaria is common. The lower map shows the regions where people have sickle cell. A lot of similarities there. More than 1,000 years ago, yes, the cities of medieval Europe were ravaged by epidemics of typhoid fever. Typhoid is caused by a bacterium that enters the body through the cells in the digestive system. The protein produced by the CF, the cystic fibrosis allele, helps block the entry of this bacterium. Individuals heterozygous for CF would have had an advantage when living in the cities with poor sanitation and polluted water, and because they also carried a normal allele, these individuals would not have suffered from cystic fibrosis. So that explains why these types of genetic disorders to this day are still pretty prevalent. So, objective 1 was to explain how small changes in DNA cause genetic disorders. Changes in genes' DNA sequence can change proteins by altering their amino acid sequences, which may affect one's phenotype. Objective 2 is summarize the problems caused by non-disjunction. The most common error during meiosis occurs when homologous chromosomes fail to separate. This mistake is known as non-disjunction, which means not coming apart. Non-disjunction may result in gametes with an abnormal number of chromosomes, which can lead to a disorder of chromosome numbers. If 2 copies of an autosomal chromosome fail to separate during meiosis, an individual may be born with 3 copies of that chromosome. This condition is known as trisomy, meaning 3 bodies. The most common form of trisomy involves 3 copies of chromosome 21. It is Down syndrome, which is often characterized by mild to severe mental retardation and a high frequency of certain birth defects. Chromosome 21, there's 3 copies there. Non-disjunction of the X chromosome can lead to a disorder known as Turner syndrome. We're talking about the sex chromosome, X chromosome. A female with Turner syndrome usually inherits only 1 X chromosome. Women with Turner syndrome are sterile, which means they are unable to reproduce. Their sex organs do not develop properly at puberty either. In males, non-disjunction may cause Klinefelter syndrome, resulting from the inheritance of an extra X chromosome, which then interferes with meiosis and usually prevents these individuals from reproducing. There have been no reported instances of babies being born without an X chromosome, indicating that this chromosome contains genes that are vital for the survival and development of the embryo. Objective 2 is summarize the problems caused by disjunction. So if non-disjunction occurs during meiosis, gametes with an abnormal number of chromosomes could result, which could lead to a disorder of chromosome numbers, which we just discussed. So our objectives, what happened to them, were to explain how small changes in DNA cause genetic disorders, and also summarize the problems caused by nondisjunction. And they both help support our goal of analyzing how heredity and family history can impact personal health. And I'm trying to get my cute pictures to be a little bit more unique now. Instead of just puppies and kitties, we're moving into reptiles and other traditionally non-cute things. Have a good day, guys.